Welcome, everybody, to another one of the 12 Days of Christmas, this time with the awesome, phenomenal John Corey of Property Fortress. Now, John is or was a tech entrepreneur. He's now a property tech entrepreneur and was also one of the panel from last year's 2020 Christmas forecast that we did. Link to the video will be up here for you to follow through. So, John, it's been a fantastic year. We all pitched in, David, yourself, and myself, along with Ranjan and Fiona, some expert opinions on what 2020 could look like. But we all seem to have a blind spot. We missed March and COVID. So, would you like to allude to what you predict might be on the horizon for 2021, what it might look like for property investors, where the opportunities could be, where the threats and the risks are?
So the 2020 is a very good, really good example of stuff happens, okay? And you have to be able to adjust. And while it's that time of year and it's sort of fun to predict, we're crap at predicting. If someone was really good at it, they wouldn't be listening to us. They would be doing lots of other things because they'd be super wealthy and all the rest. What I think is true is that you should look back and you should think about and what might happen in sort of scenarios and be nimble, intellectually nimble, business nimble, economically nimble, that you may have to adjust. You may have to change direction. You may have to deal with things that no one's seen before. It's rare to see a pandemic. There's very few people that are alive that could have even seen one. Funny enough, by the way, just a little tangent, because I do this. Why is the Spanish flu called the Spanish flu? It's because the British press and the UK government in 1918, 1919 tried to hide the pandemic. So they banned any communication in the public press. And it was only through the Spanish news reports that the public of Britain started to realize that there was a flu going on and that lots of people were dying. And this is because of World War I. They didn't want to disrupt the public and make them freak out while they're trying to fight the Germans. So literally it's called the Spanish flu because Britain found out about it by reading the Spanish press, or however you do that, back in 1919.
Wow. So we've got a history lesson off you there in terms of, shall we say, press management and press manipulation, dare I say it. So coming back to the property side of things, after that interesting digression, what do you think is likely to happen for property investors? I mean, we've got residential sector, we've got commercial, we've got development. We've alluded to sectors like serviced accommodation and holiday lets, which are variants on residential.
So my business in 2020 had its best year in the recent past. I think it's because people stopped rushing around doing everything that was urgent and they started thinking about what was important. And a number of people came to me for guidance about how they could actually get their business on a new footing. Second is I have two clients that are in the service accommodation area. Both have had a phenomenal 2020. And that's not just relative to, everybody else got hammered, they didn't. How they run their business is different. So therefore they've had different results. I've seen the same with a few other people. Now, I just did a week-long class, or most of the week last week, on marketing. And part of the reason is I wanted to learn how to run a large online event because these companies were all scrambling. So it's a wonderful opportunity to learn about new things, and everybody's actually at the same level. There's no real leaders. In fact, the Tony Robbins event that happened a few months back was hosted by the people that I just did this class with. And that was all brand new. I mean, 6 months ago, they didn't know how they would do a large global event. Now they've sort of cracked it a bit and they're figuring out what works, what doesn't work. So it's definitely an opportunity now in the property sector to look at alternatives, to look at things, to test things, use crowdfunding, put in very small amounts of money so you can experiment at very low levels. And then when you get something you like, you can go all in, you can do your own deal, you can put more significant money, but experiment with very little capital. But you got to get really close, right up the coal face, so to speak, but do it on So you can afford to spend £100 10 times, and if 9 of them go bust, so what? You've learned things for £900. Maybe the last one you broke even, whatever. The point is, this is a time of rapid assimilation, rapid growth for your learning. And we are not done yet. We don't know how this is going to play out. We just had a new variant in the COVID in the UK. We've got vaccines rolling out. The vaccines actually help you if you get it. They don't necessarily stop you from transmitting. They don't know that yet. So there's all kinds of unknown unknowns. And you just have to be nimble, and you have to look at each deal. There'll be some really great deals because some people made bad bets. Sorry, but if you can take them out at a good price, go for it.
I would certainly agree with you there that there are going to be a significant number of opportunities, and something which you shared last year was about the bear in the woods, and you only have to outrun the slowest person to beat the bear. You don't have to run faster than the bear.
Yeah,
now,
the bear will be satiated on the other person. So, you just need to sprint faster than your friend.
That's right. And I think the analogy that you gave then applies to what you've just said there, which is if people have made a bad decision because they've got too high a gearing, they paid too much, they underestimated the cost of, say, developing out a site, they're going to be the person that the bear comes to eat first. And you can then pick up the scraps that are left from what that bear's left for you. So, John, I mean, it's been an interesting year. I mean, one of the key themes that we focused on last year was Brexit.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think that's going? Do you think that will affect the property market, or do you think it's a non-starter for property for 2021? Bearing in mind, we haven't actually got, it's December and we don't actually know where we're jettisoning to on the 1st of January.
At the time of recording.
Correct. Yes, yes. And David's right. It could change 20 minutes from now.
Yeah.
So it's going to be disruptive whether we have a deal or not. It has to be, because if you think about it, if you voted to leave, you want enough change so that you feel the future is better. If you voted to stay, you didn't get that. You're going to get hit by changes that you didn't want, but they're going to happen. The question is, we don't know what changes. We're having a monumental debate about our sovereignty and all this stuff for fishing rights, okay? The fishing industry is worth less than the turnover of Harrods, okay? If we shut Harrods and we gave the fishermen all the revenue or whatever, I mean, you can play around with the numbers, but like, why are we having this big, massive debate over something that like doesn't matter?
Mm-hmm. No,
so,
so
it's emotional, in other words. It's all about sovereignty.
You don't think it's to give us some leverage with the French, given what's going on the Brittany coast and the sort of excitable nature of French agriculturalists, perhaps?
I think anybody who thinks like that is not thinking. So we're going to sacrifice the whole economy to have leverage of 400 something million turnover so we can get the French to do something. It's like, really? Okay. So impact to property investors. Service accommodation, staycation people might do better if we don't have more lockdowns. Even if we do, possibly. The industry, insurance, supplies, if you're into Italian marble countertops, you might want to put extra time in your project plan until you know the materials safely in the UK. There's all kinds of ripple effects. The cost of funding might change, but the interest rates might go lower, they might go higher. There's all kinds of ways it'll play out. But for residential, COVID, sadly, I'm going to say something that sounds sad or actually doesn't sound very polite. We didn't kill enough people to make a difference to the residential housing sector. We have a shortage of housing. Most people survive COVID. A percentage do die. It is an extra amount above the normal, but it's not going to shift the balance between supply and demand. There will be people, though, who have individual situations. Someone in their family dies, they die, whatever. It's tragic and it has an impact on their lives, and there may be some ripples. But when it comes to the housing sector, it's going to be a non-event when it for pricing. What you might see is a bigger fallout from the economy if people don't have income to pay the rent, pay the mortgage. But remember, 50% of the country have no mortgages. So 50% of the country don't necessarily need an income to continue to make the house payments because they don't have house payments. They have house maintenance. They have food and shelter, heating, cooling, all that other stuff. But we need to be pragmatic about how we think of this and understand we're not going to be able to predict the future. So I think it could be a very turbulent year. We just had a turbulent year. So people are actually now better at turbulence. So it might go better than it did last year. We might have the end of the tunnel by the end of the year if the vaccines are helping to dampen it down. As we've seen, though, it mutates, but possibly the vaccines work well, even with the mutation. We'll see if we get any other twists. We have a new president in the US coming in. We'll have a new trade policy. We'll have lots of oven-ready trade deals that haven't gotten signed yet. Well, now we're going to have to negotiate. Okay, the oven-ready is not very good, but some of them might drop. It's residential housing is driven by domestic demand. Domestic demand is pretty stable right now, so I don't see a lot of changes. I just see some individual circumstances that will create possible opportunities and problems.
Do you think that the Brexit thing, sorry, Andrew, might actually, or the COVID thing, might actually change the locations that are popular within the UK so that, do you need to live in Canary Wharf or something if now you're working remotely?
I think that's actually a really good one to debate. Some people say, oh, I like going to the office. It's like, really? I wonder how many people say that. And if there's a number of employees that say you don't have to come to the office, then the staff who want to not go to the office might switch companies. So you might see some changes in the employment mix. Any company that says it's really important to get people in the office, like, so you're a local business and you don't have any other offices. Oh yeah, no, we're multinational. We have offices everywhere. It's like, well, how do you manage that? They don't come to the same place. So we forget that a lot of what we can do remotely when we have multiple offices also works if you just call people's houses offices. There's isolation, there's collaboration. As a tech creative sort of guy, yes, there's something to be said for doing work in the room with a whiteboard and all the rest of it. But we're cracking a lot of that. And if I have to go in for the work productivity creative session day, but then spend the other 4 days at home, that can work too. So I do think you'll see a shift in demand for housing in that I want an extra bedroom, which will be the office. I want maybe some more space to set up permanently the home office. That might create slightly larger homes that people need. I don't need to be in the city center for work, and I can't get to the social benefits that I have in city center, so I might move out. At the same time, it's like, look, I've always thought I wanted to live in the city center, and now's the time because I might not live forever, so I'm going to move in. And the people that want to just be in the center of their universe, whatever that means. And as the vaccines kick in, I think theaters will reopen. I think restaurants will reopen. What that means, when it'll be, whether it'll actually even be in 2021 or it'll be in 2022. There are some things that we will want to do. We just might do them different. So I like to say new normal.
That was actually a phrase I coined in July of this year. This is the new normal. And people needed to basically accept that COVID is what it is. And we can't sit around a pot all crying into it saying, I wish I could go backwards. The world is about going forwards. And that's why in the ideal world, we would all love to go back to what we knew, our comfort blanket of the past. But worlds evolve, markets evolve, markets change, and new normals create new opportunities. So with things like quantitative easing and taxation impacts in 2021, all in the loaded in the gun of the barrel, do you see those as creating opportunities, or do you see something else as opportunities, John?
I don't know if I see those specific as opportunities to create quantitative easing. I'm not sure I know how that plays out, and it's been around for a while. one thing that, just to pick up on the new normal that you were commenting on. So you said before we started, we were talking, and you said people can't get out and people can't network. It's like, really? My network in 2020 has been better than my network in 2019. Why? Because people are more inclined to want to do this online. So now I can network with people from all over the country. And as much as I like riding on a train, and I do, there was a lot of people in the UK I wouldn't see unless I traveled to them and, you know, went to a meeting somewhere, maybe in Scotland or whatever. Well, now they just show up at my monthly meeting. These are people that never would have been able to make it to my monthly meeting. So I'd actually say that the ability to network has gone up. Now, what has changed is how you network. So I run a monthly meeting, which is on a topic or something, but we also now have created some special networking sessions. There's no presentation. There's no agenda. There's no nothing other than we're going to do speed networking with property investors, because people are missing that spontaneous meeting new people, which is what you used to get with a physical meeting. But you can still network. You just have to think slightly differently about how I'm going to network.
No, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. And I remember around this time last year, I think it was, and I'll drop a link here. We had a fireside chat, didn't we, at a hotel, and we shared some thoughts about what the world was at the time and some good ways of investing. Now,
a proper fire, yes,
a proper fire and proper networking with pressing of flesh and so forth. But it's all about adapting. And I personally, I think if you approach things with a negative mindset, oh, this isn't great, then you don't see the opportunities. If you see the problems other people see and take those and find solutions for them, like you found to the networking, then you create new markets. And I guess that is where you come from with your tech background. It was about problem solving and finding solutions, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. It's, people have to, I think the phrase in Britain is go back to first principles. What is it you're really trying to do? Well, if you're, quote, trying to network, that normally means you're trying to actually discover new relationships. Well, you're going to have to put some time in and do it differently if you can't get out. It doesn't mean you should just park your business. It means you should find a way to make it happen and get that 80, 90% of what it is you're trying to get. Whether you press the flesh or not is like, well, we'll see. But if your business depends on that, you're going to have a lean year.
Yeah, no, it's about adapting. Development marketplaces. Do you see development being the same in the year going forwards, or do you see changes in terms of geography where things get developed perhaps more rurally or northern in the UK?
I think
I've
it's
really thrown
risky.
you on the spot with that one, haven't I?
Well, not really, but it's risky for someone to buy a house thinking everybody's going to stop focusing on urbanization, city centers, and all that. At the same time, if I was looking to buy a house, I might say I'll go for an extra room. So I will make that level of commitment because the downside of an extra room is not high. But if I was a developer to then say, well, I'm going to stick it out somewhere where no one lives, and as long as I have fiber to the site for the network, people are going to flock to it. I don't know that the market is ready for that. There may be a few, and you may be on the bleeding edge, but classically bleeding edge means you bleed out and die. It doesn't mean success. So I do, as a tech guy, believe there's something to be said for that. I don't think it's smart to put a lot of money on that. I think it's smart to make it eco-friendly, make it germ, you know, you can put germ killing materials in the property so it increases the safety of the home. You can create that extra usable space that with extra lighting and cables and other things is the home studio, fine. But I wouldn't, as a developer, want to like splash out on a site that's quite remote and then discover the vaccines work so well that everybody wants to move back to the city.
Coming back to the to that Spanish flu thing, what happened back then? It was 3 or 4 years before people reverted to their old normal, going to church or whatever they were doing. Now, in 3 or 4 years, do you think it's possible that we'll just lose the habit of doing that? We'll all be hooked on Zoom and virtual conferencing and all that kind of thing, and that we'll never kind of go back to it to the extent that we did.
There is something to be said for that. You develop a habit by doing something over a period of time, and it becomes your base case or how you operate. And my in-laws, I'm in the States right now. I'm with my in-laws. I was in London like 11 days ago or something. We did the whole isolation thing. And they're very proficient on their fancy iPhones and FaceTiming and all the rest of it. And, whether they need tech support or whether they need, what do you want us to order? So when you land, it'll be here. And they push another button, then Amazon or the supermarket delivers. I mean, that sort of stuff. My 80-something-year-old wife, my wife's 80-something-year-old Cardiff, she's doing her Tesco orders or whatever brand she uses. She didn't do that before. She used to walk to the corner store. Well, maybe she wants to walk to get some exercise, but the corner store is not open. So she's ordering online. She doesn't have to go out during the bad weather. That's going to be something she knows she can do. It's no longer, I don't know how to do it. It's like, no, I know how to do that just fine. And she's quite quick at picking up these things, but she only got her smartphone this year. So it was sort of, or maybe late last year, it was sort of an accident that she did, but she's taken to it really well. So I think, David, you're right that there'll be quite a few things that people change how they operate. They change what is acceptable. There won't be, you have to come into the office. We won't let you work from home. It's like, why? And I think all of us have been to university. Think about when you go to university. The professor says, this is the course or the topic. In the US, we'd say course. We're going to cover this material. These are the dates for the quizzes, exams, whatever. There'll be these lectures. Frankly, they don't keep head count, so who cares if you go? You need to master the material. You need to pass the test, and you get the grade. So we all were trained as university students how to work effectively remotely and socialize when we feel like it. And then we go to this thing, you must be seen to count. And as one boss that I was a peer with, he said, I like to see my people, I like to be able to manage the ones I see. Well, given the bank has switched from regional management, which is what he was used to functional management, and you have a team that's around the world, you just told me you can't manage. Be careful what you say.
Interesting. And here in Cambridge, the uni, this was back in April 2020, they said, we're not coming back for lectures in the lecture halls until October 21. That was quite a bold decision, and one which now, looking back on it now, seems quite sensible. But then they were kind of very much going out on a limb.
Yeah. And if they can deliver the content, that's fine. Students come to Cambridge, particularly overseas students, but others even, come to Cambridge for the socialization and the away from home. And so the whole Cambridge experience, which is quite unique and quite special, is somehow lost. So how do you combine the two? How do you maybe say, well, we're not going to have lectures, but we are going to have social engagement. We are going to have the walking the quad and all the rest of it.
That's exactly what they've done. So the students will come here. They will have little bubbles, and they will, in a socially distanced way, have very small supervisions. But it's just the large lectures which are off the agenda.
Correct.
John, I mean, you say 2020 has been a really good year for you. Your consultancy business has grown significantly. Similarly, I've seen the same, and I know David has also experienced the consultancy growing, which is a sign of a changing requirement from our customer base. What is it that you see yourself as doing in 2021 with regards to your property business and your consultancy that perhaps people could take away as a pearl of wisdom from you?
Well, I'm primarily a landlord when it comes to the property side. And I also invest passively through crowdfunding and other people's deals. It allows me to pick and choose a lot of different deals, and I don't have to put large sums into one deal and the concentration of risk. So I'm expecting that I'm going to have one or more of my meetings, or whatever you want to call the things I do, online from Hawaii. And no one in the UK probably will notice.
Yeah. Well, today we're
and
talking to you in Pennsylvania
That's right.
at home. So
Yeah.
these are very socially distanced times, aren't they?
Correct. So no longer is it when I get back to London, we can meet. It'll be, we can meet. And if I'm back in London, we can meet a different way if we want, but we don't
Yeah.
have to. And I can be respectful of someone's needs to isolate. There are some people at higher risk and they don't feel left out. It's emotionally different, but in the sense of business, they don't feel left out. They're no longer at a competitive disadvantage because they have a medical condition. The same with, when I started in property investing, there were no cell phones. There were no Google Maps. You had a tape machine with a little tape to record things. You put ads in the paper to rent your house and you book it on a Tuesday to show up on a Saturday, okay? There was lots of things. If you want to talk to a builder, you drove to the site or waited till the evening if they called you back from their home. But they certainly didn't have the ability to call you from the site. And no one could send digital documents. Okay, so the dark ages. Well, with all the tech these days, we can transact, we can do business, we can sign agreements, we can have an actual update. You know, this person can go visit the site and show me live images, we can chat about it. You know, they can maybe be on under an umbrella or whatever, but literally it's immersive and so it's collaborative. And people are now happier to accept that. They're not happy to do it, they're happy to accept that they can do it, which allows possibilities to exist. So I think my business going forward, I'll be able to scale up more when it comes to reach the whole of the UK. I can have a monthly meeting that isn't requiring me to be in London once a month. Whether I am or not, it doesn't matter. And I can actually collaborate on deals. I mean, I've been talking to a couple in Switzerland. I have some clients in Switzerland and help them with the deal in the UK. And there's this whole sort of borders don't matter. What still does create a little bit of an issue is time zones. You know, it depends on how far apart the time zones are.
Well, that's interesting because I'd actually made a note here of property networking and that people should hook up onto your next property networking event because you've actually changed the way that you do your networking. So you've got a different methodology. Now, what I was going to ask was, do you see a hybrid model going forwards from here?
Yes, I do. And I think two different ways. One is there'll be later in the year hybrid events where people meet in a physical room, but you're live broadcasting from the room. So those that can't make it, those that just want to dip in a bit, those that have family requirements, children or whatever, adult care, they don't have to travel, they don't have to have the hotel and all the other costs. And those that want to be in the room or those that can easily get there can do that. And you get the best of both worlds. I also think you're going to see a split. When it's content rich, it'll be online. When it's social dynamic without a strong agenda, it could be more in the room. But you might then schedule those instead of the second Tuesday of the month, which is my meeting. I would say, well, maybe once a quarter we'll do a 10 to 4 on a weekend. So maximizing the number of people that can get there. They have time to travel, they have time to do the whatever it is, they have time to head home. They don't have to stay over. They can get cheap rates on the train or whatever. But for the content to help them grow educationally, that'll be drip fed, that'll be on demand, that'll be live conversation with an expert, but it's not tied to when I want to meet with people. And if it's once a quarter or something like that, more people will probably make the effort. Therefore, the dynamic of more people in the room becomes positive, assuming social distancing is not an issue. So, you know, there is, when that happens is tied to the virus, but how that happens, I think people understand how to get the best of both by decoupling.
Yeah, no, I think you're on the money there, and I think you're headed in the right direction. I think 2020's shown us that we have to adapt. And this time last year, approximately, we were at an office suite in central London next door to Buckingham Palace, doing this live face-to-face with an audience. And now we're having to do it because of tier 4 in London and social distancing digitally. So we've adapted to that. And I think it's the message that I'm hearing from you for the audience is don't stay still, constantly innovate, constantly look to change, and always adapt. Don't be the oak tree, be the pine tree that bends in the wind.
That's a reasonable analogy.
Yeah.
And you
So
see, the tech has always been there. It's a bit for me like the discovery of penicillin, where Mr. Fleming put his cheese on the shelf in the 1920s, and it sat there until it was needed in the Second World War. Well, we've had the tech to do what we've been doing in 2020. We've had it all this millennium, and now, in a sense, in 2020 is when we joined the 21st century.
yeah. So any last comments for?
Well, I want to play off of that a little. So it's not, people shouldn't think of it as laggards or slow to adapt, but societal change takes a while. And there's an HR person that was quoted as saying, we have now accelerated changes in how we run the company from an HR people management point of view by 5 or 10 years. The stuff that we planned for 10 years, we did in 3 months. And it wasn't because we were lacking the tech, it's because it's this inertia to stay the way you are. And we were forced to reset, similar to a lot of other events, wars and things that cause that. The flip side of that too is also people have now rethought what's valuable to them. And you might see greater family engagements and social events once we can legally do it, because people now realize that you don't have forever and that you do need to think of this stuff, but you don't have to, you can go visit a relative for a month if you wanted to do that and not have to take a month off work. So that resets people's thinking about how things work. I know David's wife is from another country, so there's an opportunity that he could be in either country and no one needs to worry about it. But yet you can tick the family boxes. My wife has family in one area of the country. We live in London. So, we're over here in the US visiting our family. And yet this looks almost exactly the same, other than I have slightly better lighting here than I do in London.
And I believe you also have a couple of feet of snow as well outside to enjoy snowboarding with later today.
Well, shoveling. There's no hills, but I can, you wake up in the morning, it's below freezing, and that's normal.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds idyllic, John. I mean, I'm sat here and I've got a mug of hot chocolate and I'm just thinking of you out there on the in the snow as well. Oh, look at that. We're all there together. So, John, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing a really insightful and inspirational way of thinking about 2021. You've shared a lot of different insights to how other people have shared. But that said, like last year, all of the experts shared a different view of 2020, but all around a common theme. So,
actually, one tip, I think it's very powerful to look at prior predictions, like reading a magazine that's 6 months from 6 months ago, and they're talking about how the election is going to turn out in the US, or listening to the last year's 2020 recordings, which were done in late 2019, and seeing what people said there versus how things played out. Because you learn quite a bit from how people were thinking versus how they're thinking now, and how things played out, and could you have seen it or not? And it really does shape your framework for, okay, predicting is probably a fool's errand, but at the same time, you can learn from trying to.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on that, John. And that is something, as an accountant, we always used to do what we call project appraisals after a project to assess what we could have done better and what we could have actually stretched ourselves to achieve within the projects. So really wise advice for everybody to adopt. John, I'll put your last year's video up here. I'll put videos over here to some of the other experts. That's the one.
Yeah. And people just need to interact with it. And if you want to reach out, I'm sure that everybody that's recorded some is more than happy to have a chat. So whether they do it through text or whether they do it in a live conversation like this, reach out to people. Don't be shy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And because you've said that, I'm going to drop your details down below, John, in the comments, and then people can reach out to John. You've heard him speak. He's very approachable. He won't bite. He might ask you to book on an online calendar to book your appointment with him. But all the very best for 2021, John. We shall stay in touch. I must jump over onto your new format of networking events. When is the next one, John? Do you have a date scheduled?
Second Tuesday of the month. I'm not quite sure what that means in January, but also we'll be relaunching the speed networking sessions we're doing. So if you want to hear about a topic, second Tuesday of the month, if you actually just want to meet people, just the serendipity, no agenda, no pitches, no sort of hour-long talk, just networking, we have that also. I do that with Tim Bishop, and it's been rather amazing. Funny enough, though, the take-up is rather weak, yet the people love it when they do it. And I think what it is it's too easy not to commit. So it's like, oh yeah, I should do this, but I don't have time right now. It's like, really? So I encourage people to just like, it takes 30, 40 minutes, boom, you meet 10 or 15 people, done. And if you want to follow up with them, you can.
No, it's what it's all about. Talking to different people shares different objectives, different insights. And that is why we decided to do 12 days of Christmas with 12 different experts to give insights from different perspectives. I mean, with your international presence, investing, being based in America and the UK, it sort of gives you a different dynamic to discover things.
So I want to
the perspective that people enjoy.
I want to challenge David and Andrew. Rather than the 12 days of Christmas and waiting to a year from year to year, we could, you know how there's this idea of a 12-week year? Well, we could have 12 insights every 12 weeks or every quarter.
What a great idea. What do you think, Andrew?
There's a great thought, John. Are you up to sharing every 12 weeks, John?
Yeah, and we'll see how things are progressing and how people are changing and adapting. And I think that'll give people a better framework to think about, okay, every 12 weeks, you might have to change a fair amount, but other things have a much longer arc, and that's fine.
Well, there is an awful lot of change coming around a 12-week cycle this year.
Yeah. Brexit?
You've got administrations and Brexit, retail administrations in December and Brexit 1st of January.
Yeah.
Stamp duty cliffs, followed by
spring budget, CGT changes, all sorts.
Yeah. See you in 12 weeks.
Furlough, and then we roll into the fact that there'll be more administrations at the end of March because more companies will go when all the furlough stops. And then we'll probably see the banks revisiting the covenants on the commercial loans that they've made, and that will cause a rebase in June. So we've already got a number of different milestones to monitor. So there's a great little one there, John, and I think I'll be taking you up on that one for this coming year. Thank you very much. Hit subscribe and you'll hear about that first when you when we launch that, and drop some comments. Did you agree with John? Or if you disagree, what did you disagree on? And don't forget, give a thumbs up, always helps. John, thank you very much. You've been absolute brilliant today, and it's been a pleasure to be able to chat again and catch up. And let's see if at the end of the year, we were even remotely close at the start of this year, because we missed the big event of the year, the COVID event, didn't we, last year?
You know, stuff happens.
It does. John, thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thank you, David, as well.